Hi there, this video is about assignment 2, year 12 geography 2020. Basically what I want to do is to go through the assignment and make sure you understand fully what you're doing and hopefully get good marks. So what you're going to be doing, you're going to be putting together a case study either on Lady Elliot Island or Shelley Beach. Obviously if you're coming on the Lady Elliot Island field trip, you'll choose that. If not, you're just doing it on Shelley Beach. And I'm going to be explaining to you what a case study is and what it's going to look like. So why are we doing this? Well, first of all, this is straight from the syllabus. You're going to need 2 case studies. Now, I said I'm only going to look at one, but in class we're going to look at the other one as well. So that's why it's really important that we get people doing both the Lady Elliot Island one as well as the Shelley Beach one, and then what we'll do, we'll swap the information in class as a classroom activity. So this information here comes straight from the syllabus. You need to know 2 case studies, and you've got to talk about the spatial patterns and dimensions, the biophysical interactions, the nature and rate of change which affects the ecosystem's functioning, human impacts, and they're both positive and negative, and then also traditional and contemporary management practices as well. And as you can see, we can pick them from a whole range of different ecosystems. So before you start putting together your work, start thinking about who you're doing this for and the purpose. So the purpose of this, as we've said, is to look at 2 case studies that we can apply all our learning from, and then obviously use that in our HSC exam. So the purpose is obviously making sure that you've got that information ready and available for you to use in the future. Your audience, obviously it's going to be me because I'll be marking it, and also it's going to be yourself as well because you're going to use the information in your revision ready for HSC examination. So it's really important that you know why you're doing this and who your audience is. So when it comes to writing, your audience is going to be really important because you need to be straightforward, use facts. You've got to explain. One of the questions, you've got to evaluate management practices, so you've got to give a judgment. So it's really important that you know who you're writing for and the purpose. Remember, you're writing this case study for yourself as well as for me, and then also the purpose is so you can use it later. You're demonstrating your knowledge to real life examples. So always remember that while you're doing the task. You're going to be doing a case study, and a case study is basically an example of where things happen. So just remember that your case study, I've left it open that you might want to use lots of visuals. You might want to do it on a sheet of A3 paper, or what you might want to do is in 2 sections. You might want to do a bit of an extended piece of writing, and then what you might want to do is to summarize that in a sheet that you can use later for revision notes. I'll do a bit of an example of one and what one might look like, but I've left it very open. So use your marking criteria to help you write enough information to get those marks. So part 1, you've got to locate the ecosystem, and you've got to mention, you've got to describe where things are. That's what spatial patterns are. You've got to tell us the dimension, and what we mean by dimension, we're talking about location, so where is it in the world, and then when we're using the location, we've got to talk about latitude, where it is north and south of the equator. We've got to talk about the altitude. Is it at height or is it below sea level? Sorry, I put latitude twice. It's the same thing. We've got to talk about its size, its shape, and the continuity. Now, size, shape is really important because when we're talking about ecosystems at risk, normally the size of the ecosystem can affect its vulnerability and resilience, and it's the same with the continuity. Continuity, like Lady Elliot Island, is part of the Great Barrier Reef. So the continuity, although it's an individual reef, it makes up a bigger reef, and that's what we mean by continuity. And the same for Shelley Beach. Shelley Beach is a sand dune, but it operates as a bigger sand dune because we've got the whole of the New South Wales coast, and obviously sand is moved up and down the New South Wales coast to form land features like the sand dunes. So that's what we mean by continuity. So the first bit, you're going to need to say where things are. Remember, we're in geography, so you're going to need to have to include a map. With a map, you've got to have a title, border, orientation, a legend, and most importantly a scale. Remember, we're talking about where things are, therefore you need to have that scale. Another thing with your map, use it in your description. Don't just you put a map in, make sure you refer to it in your description. So part one, you're just setting the scene, you're telling me where it is, you're telling me latitude, longitude, that type of thing. Quite straightforward and quite easy, and that's where you'll get a lot of marks. The next part, you've got to include a comprehensive explanation of the biophysical interactions. So first of all, an explanation, you've got to tell me the how and why. What are the biophysical interactions and how are they operating at that ecosystem? So remember our biophysical interactions, we need to remember our stuff that we looked at last year in year 11, biosphere, lithosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere, BLAR, the acronym that we use. I want you to tell me those interactions. Now I've put the marking criteria, and this is straight back from the syllabus. There are 4, but they're worded slightly different. If you're going for those top answers, those top bands, you need to make reference to all of those 4. This is very explicit in the marking criteria. Relate each case study to those 4 biophysical interactions. And remember, you're not just stating, so you're not just saying at Shelley Beach there's sand, therefore that's the lithosphere. You need to explain why it's at the lithosphere. Sand is a mixture of different parts of rock that's been transported. This is what the lithosphere is. Okay, I hope that helps you. Okay, part 3, you've got to explain the nature and rate of change of the ecosystems which affects ecosystem functioning. So starting off, ecosystems functioning, remember we've done a whole lesson on functioning, how things work, the nature and rate of change. So remember, natural change takes a long time, therefore that's going to help an ecosystem function well. If the change is quite gradual, then it will affect its vulnerability and resilience. So those ecosystems that have a lot of quick change, human impacts, they might not adjust to that change. So that's what we're talking about here. Again, it's an explanation, so I need you to talk about how things are and why, the how and the why. So part 2, part 3 are quite chunky bits of information, and that's why when you're going back to your case study, you're going to need some good paragraphs, but you're going to also need to think about how you can summarize that into a case study that you can use later on. So you might want to do this in 2 parts. You might want to have a bit of an extended piece of writing, and then another little handout that you can use later on. Part 4, this one's quite easy. You've just got to identify and describe 5 human impacts that impact the ecosystem at risk, and you're going to get 1 mark for each human impact. Human impacts can be both positive and negative, so make sure you're using a variety of both positive and negative. We don't just want negative impacts. You might be wondering what positive and negative impacts mean. So positive means it's going to benefit the ecosystem. So if at Shelley Beach we've got areas that we can fence off to stop people walking on sand dunes, stop sand dune erosion, that's a positive aspect. A negative might be that there's holes in the fence, which means people can trample on vegetation, killing it, and then making the sand dune vulnerable to change. So that's what we mean by that. Part 5, this is probably one of the hardest parts because you've got this question about evaluating. So you've got to evaluate 3 different management strategies that are used at either Lady Elliot Island or Shelley Beach. Now, with evaluate, you've got to give a judgment. How effective is that? Now you can do both, you know, successful or not so successful. So, you know, talking about Shelley Beach, you've got some fencing there obviously to try and keep people out, but how effective is that? Well, we can judge that based on the amount of flora fauna that might be there. We might say, yeah, it's pretty successful because it's doesn't cost much to put up, and you know, there's lots of vegetation there, there's sand dunes still present. So that's what we mean by evaluate. You've got to make a judgment, and if you don't make a judgment, then you can't get into those top band. Now I'm looking for 3 different management strategies. So I've already said, like, you know, at Shelley Beach you've got fenced off areas. That's one management strategy. You can't use that again, so you might have to use the broadwalk that separates the paths in between Shelley Beach. That would be a separate one. The car park would be another one. So there are 3 management strategies. So you've got to talk about the ecological sustainability of those strategies. So we're looking at how we can, so ecological sustainability means how we can preserve those ecosystems. So we're really basing our judgment based on how sustainable those ecosystems are. Again, that's going to be quite chunky. You've got to think about how you're going to set that out. Like I said, you might want to do 2 parts, like a report where there's lots of extended response, and then hand in a separate A3, A4 piece of paper that breaks down the case study so you can use later on. Part 6 is your bibliography. You're gonna find lots of information, whether it's Lady Elliot Island, at Lady Elliot Island, or you know, at Shelley Beach, talking about sand dune formations, that type of thing. So by all means use it, but remember, I'm not asking you to copy and paste it from the internet. I want you to you know, put it in your own words. So if there's some facts, by all means use it, but obviously you've got to reference that, and that's part of your marking criteria as well. So that's the 6 different sections that you need to include. You need to make sure you're answering all of them. Okay, so plenty of work there to do. Things to remember: drafts. I'm going to sell it now. It's going to be due for the last week of term. You've got plenty of time to get that started. There is going to be some class time. When we're going to Lady Elliot Island, we will be doing some work there too, and just start handing in drafts. When I say a draft, I don't mean the whole thing. I mean maybe 1 question at a time. When you're doing study, make sure you're using that time to write a draft, and email it to me. But obviously I don't want to see any more drafts the week before, because I won't have enough time to mark it and give you feedback. So just remember, drafts, you can submit them to me emailed or just written down. Make sure you're checking the marking criteria as you're right, making sure that you've understood what is required from the question, and if you don't understand that verb word, make sure you look it up. If you're still unsure, make sure you ask me, but keep referring back to that marking criteria. Check your work, edit your work. Does it get enough marks for a particular section? And remember the purpose and the audience of the task. The purpose of this task is to give you a case study that you can use in the future for your HSC exam. Your audience is yourself as well as me. So I'm looking for some good extended pieces of writing, especially for sections 2, 3 and 5. So you're going to have to do maybe a report. You might want to break it down into a bit of an essay style, and then you want something that you can use later on to revise. So that's where that visuals come in. By all means, take photos when you're at Lady Island and use those. Use other people's photos if you wish, but you've got to remember to reference them. So just remember those 3 things, and I hope that this video has helped you, and obviously any problems, let me know. Apologies for some of the noise going in the background. I'm actually in the car waiting for my daughter's dance to finish. I thought this would be a great time to record the video. Make sure you like and put any and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. Any problems, give us a shout. Thanks.